Hey everyone, Brandon here from B2R Investing and Financial Talk. Today I'm going to go over real numbers on a recent build to rent that I finished back in July. Some people say it can't be done with brand new builds. I'm going to go through the real numbers and show you how good it is, and even some of at the end, some of the magic of build to rent. Stay with me. I pray for stewardship of the knowledge and money you are entrusted with. Okay, let's get started. First, I want to go through the basics of this build. So you can see here, the cost to build ended up being exactly $205,820. I look at under roof square footage, and with the single garage and all the porches, it came out to $118 a square foot. What I'm doing even on this $205,000, this includes the lot purchase, the closing cost for the construction loan, all the interest carry, and any cost that is related to this build. So that comes up to the $205,820. I ended up with a loan at $186,000 when it was all completed, and I'm trying to keep my loan to value at 70% or very close to that 70%. So that 186 on the loan, the cash that I had into the investment was total of $33,000. That was the complete amount of cash, both with putting down money on the balance of the construction and the closing costs. It appraised at $262,000. So when I underwrite projects, I want to limit my risks and do some de-risking measures when I'm doing the build. So when I'm looking at the property, I underwrite it based off of low market rents. I'm looking at where average rents are, and I know them very well using MLS data and all kinds of sources of data. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I want to underwrite my projects at 5% below average market, even though I know I probably am going to get average and sometimes even better because they're brand new construction. I would say I'm averaging about $50 more than market when I'm doing these, but I'm underwriting it off 5% below market. But one further thing that I do is I look at what I call break-even analysis. I want break-even point even with allocations for reserves to be 15% below average market rents. This helps limit my risk. And then when I'm during construction, I look at my interest rate and I average at least 50% higher than where current market is with the quote I might get if I were to do the 30-year permanent, 30-year fixed rate financing. I do all of my investment properties with 30-year fixed rate financing. I don't do variable rate or loans that come and mature in 5 or 7 years. How people lose lots of their properties is because of the debt structure. I'm wanting to keep fixed rate financing and hold that expense as a constant. But during construction, I underwrite it at a little higher interest rate. If I'm looking at the market, do I see where rates are going? And on these projects, I knew rates were getting steadily lower, but I still underwrote this project at 50 basis points higher. If I thought rates were going higher, I might go 100 basis points or 1% higher with the expectation of that. but I want to be as conservative as possible. And so I underwrite off of low average rents. I know my break even being 15% below average market rents, and I'm using a higher interest rate. But today I'm going to go over what happened when I completed. Because I've been in conversations recently where some people say either they don't want to do it or they don't think it's very possible. So in this build, I'm looking for properties that are at least 100% of annual rents or lower. That is my metric for the lot cost. I'm looking for lots that have all the utilities, including water and sewer, and I'm wanting to be on this one at $25,000 or less. I'm trying to get ideally at 50% of annualized rents. That is my ultimate objective, but I know it will cash flow at a good opportunity with good cash on cash return at 100% of annualized rents per door. So if I was looking for a duplex, quadplex, number of doors, it's 100% of however many doors will be on that lot and that project. This one is a single family build, and I'm building these, and I want to go over the numbers. So on the low market rents, this ended up being 5.5%, was $19.85 with annualized rents of that $23,000. Tax in this area. Why this works here is these are infill lots just outside of the city limits, which saves me about 1%. Here in Texas, most of the property tax is around 2.2 to 2.5%. And in this area, the tax on these properties comes out to 1.2%. And that's why these numbers work in these areas on the suburbs of Dallas-Fort Worth. And this was outside of city limits. So the tax, and what I'm figuring out is not being optimistic. I'm being conservative. This is what the appraisal would be, and this is what the tax would be when it's fully appraised after construction. So there's the tax. Insurance, what I'm doing, I'm using an insurance product. A lot of these I'm using steadily, and we're doing $7,500 deductibles. But one of the features that I like about it is each individual policy has $1 million liability policy, and the rates are very good. And so these are the rate quotes. I start out at 8% reserves with new construction because the first year I have a builder warranty. So I don't have any expenses. And typically on new construction, you don't start having a lot of expenses till year 7, 8. So I start at 8%. And I add 1% every other year. And so far in the 4.5 years, I've been able to build large reserves because I've had very limited expenses in just 5 years of all the build to rent projects I've done. So this model is working. So my NOI on low market rents comes out to 8.95%. Or 17,000 and change on this under low market conditions. My mortgage, of course, it was a fixed rate, came out to 14,000. So my cash flow on low market, $3,400, $286 a month. But my cash on cash return ended up being 10.4% on the $33,000. The beauty of that is knowing what average, good, and great is. If you go over here, now let me get over this way, average in our area for any investment products, putting in that down payment is running between 3 and 4%. You must know what average is. I know what average is, and I only want not good deals, but I want great deals. Good, those that are good, I would say it's about double that. It's 7 to 8%. Great deals are 10% or higher. That's where I want to be, and that's where I hold my money accountable, is that 10%. So let's look at that. So there we go. So we've got the low market, our cash in. And the reason I have this number down here, if this were my money from earned income, I'm figuring out income tax and Social Security and Medicare. That would have cost me around $44,500 to come up with that $33,000. So my break even on this one comes out at 18.4% is break even based off this build project. But what ended up happening was I got market rents. The tenant loved it so much. This rented out. Once we put it on the market and it was ready to be leased, we put it on the market and it leased in less than 1 week. And the individual that loved it so much said, I am willing to do 2 years lease on this property. So I got 2 years lease within 1 week and got full market rents from somebody that's well qualified, that I believe on this property probably will stay for many years. And as I've seen it, she's so proud of it. She loves the look of it, that she's going to be here for years, and she's already told me that she loves it and takes great care. So I got full average market rents at $2,100. So there is the annual numbers of $25,000. Of course, the taxes are the same at $2,600. Same thing with the insurance. Now I still did 8% of the current rent, so that came out to $2,016. My NOI was $18,740, and that was over 9.1% NOI. That was my yield, unlevered yield on it. And the mortgage was that fixed $14,000. So it came out to $4,700, $390 plus a month in cash flow, with a cash on cash return of 14.2%. It can be done if you get the land right and the rents are right. Now, what I put down here is the principal pay down. So the principal pay down over a year was 6.7% on my $33,000 down. So now I'm getting a general, simple calculation internal rate of return, and I don't include appreciation on my internal rate of return. My internal rate of return is now 20.9%. But here is the wonderful thing to the build to rent model if you do it right. I've been able to do all these build to rents with instant forced equity. That is the magic of build to rent. Looking at buying on the resale market, you start out with equity from your own money. And that goes back to what I'm talking about, that $33,000, and it cost me $44,000 to put that $33,000. So that equity came from my own pocket. If I were buying on the resale market, I'm just moving pockets, moving it from a bank account into a property. And I'm not gaining any equity other than the principal pay down. What I like about the build to rent model, if I can build it for less than what it appraises for, and that appraisal is accurate and realistic, I'm building wealth out of thin air, and that's the magic. So this appraised at $262,000. That created build or forced equity of $56,000 that did not come from my pocket, because I know I want to, in investment property, it's not just cash flow, it's building wealth. I focus on both. How do I build wealth in an exponential way? It's through my build to rent model. And what I've been able to do is to create wealth out of thin air. And I created this $56,000 that did not come from my pocket. That's the magic. So what I'm looking at is I traded $33,000 over here, $33,000 in equity, in down payment for equity of $76,000. That's why I like the build to rent model. Not only am I able to get a 14% cash on cash return, which is great in today's market, but I built $56,000 of equity out of thin air. I got both. That's the magic of my build to rent model and why I do it. And I've got several others that I know are doing it in other states right now, and they're starting to see. I talked to somebody yesterday that just getting started on his build and got the appraisal after it's completed versus his cost, and he is elated at it and seeing the magic of that build equity. He's getting the same thing, a little over 20% build equity out of thin air that he didn't have to pay for, plus the principal pay down, and over time plus appreciation. So you're starting out at building wealth much faster with the build to rent model. I will put in the notes a copy of the spreadsheet so that maybe you can use that has the formulas to create that you can add in for the low, average, and also the break-even analysis. And I hope it'll be valuable to you. Feel free to look for that spreadsheet. This is how I do it, and this is why build to rent has worked for me. Till next time.